Well, hello and welcome to this year's SiMy Christmas Fakeaway Challenge. We've got a whole bunch of recipes that we're going to be prepping for you to go with the recipe packs and recipe cards that will be coming out soon. And to set the ball rolling today, we have lentil soup, asked for by a couple of people and a big favourite with the young folks that come to SiMy. So with no more ado, we'll get started. I got the ingredients here already prepped just to save a little bit of time. We've got onion, celery and carrots finely chopped. We tend to do that because the young people, quite a lot of them don't really like lumpy soup, as they put it. So we chop everything nice and fine. If you like your soup lumpy, then chop it a bit rougher. If you like everything really smooth, a little bit finer, and there you go. So we've got in here, we've got our onions, our celery and our carrots. To go with that, we've got some passata, or chopped tomatoes you can use as well. Obviously got our red lentils for the lentil soup, and we've got some vegetable stock pots and a little oil. We're using rapeseed oil. You can use vegetable oil, olive oil, whatever you've got. And the only other thing that you'll need for this is some water to add into the mix later on. So to get going, let's get our pan on. To start off with, we want a good glug of oil in the bottom of the pan. Get that coming up nice to temperature. We always try when we're selecting recipes to keep them fairly simple. So for the lentil soup in particular, there's no special kitchen tools. All we've really used is a chopping board, a decent sharp knife, and we've got our hot plate and big soup pan. Granny Pratt's broth pan making a reappearance for this Christmas. So we want to get our oil pretty hot just to start with, just to set the ball rolling. What we do want to do though is when we're cooking all this stuff for our soup, is we want to cook it really gently. We don't want to kind of fry the onions hard and things like that. So just going to chuck a bit of onion in there, see how it's doing. Starting to go. I'm just going to give it a moment or two more, just while we're waiting for that to get started. There we go, that's it. So the onions go in. Give them a bit of a stir around in the hot oil. And just keep moving them about. And as I say, the important thing with the onions, the celery and the carrots is that we don't fry them too hard. If you sort of you want the onions to change colour. They're sort of fairly clear. When you start cooking, you're looking for them to go white and maybe a little bit golden brown at the edges. You don't want them fried off like the onions you get from a hamburger stall down at the M&D's or something like that. They taste good in a burger, but for when we're making soup or making stock, you're just gently frying off the onions so that it basically takes that sort of sharp acidic taste off the onions, and it sort of gets a slightly sweeter flavour out of the onions as well. Nice. Just keep stirring that, and then we're going to add the celery in. Give that a bit of a stir as well. As far as possible, we try and make all our recipes vegetarian or vegan so that any of the young people or the staff can all eat the same food. If you're happy eating meat and you want to add a little bit of extra flavour into this soup, one of the ways you can do that is if you've got some bacon lying about the house over Christmas, you can cut it up with a pair of scissors into little bits, drop that in right at the start and fry it in with the onions. So you're kind of basically cooking the onions in the bacon fat, and that will certainly add a bit of flavour to the soup. But don't do that if you're vegetarian or if you eat halal or anything that might prevent you from cooking bacon. And then the carrots go in. And again, you'll find that if you need to add a little bit of oil in here just to keep things moving along, that's absolutely fine. You can adjust the temperature of your ring if you need to. The important thing is that as I say, you're gently frying, but that you are frying. Sometimes, especially when you put the carrots in, the carrots can release a lot of water, and if you're not cooking it fast enough, you start to get quite a lot of liquid at the bottom of the pan, and then everything starts to kind of boil rather than you're sort of stewing your carrots rather than frying them. And again, frying off all this stuff just makes everything a little bit sweeter and has a better taste out of it. So that's why we're kind of frying this stuff to start with. And this is actually really a nice, pretty straightforward recipe. One of the reasons that we cook lentil soup so often at SiMy for the young people is that, one, it doesn't take many ingredients, and two, it's a really simple recipe and you can tweak it to suit. And it seems to be pretty much universally popular. We get lots of positive noises for our lentil soup. You're going to excuse me just for a second because I forgot to fill my jug with water. You just keep moving it around. The other thing that we've done, or the other thing that lentil soup is great for, I think, is that you can play around with what's in here. So at different times we've added, if we've had some sweet potatoes sitting in the office, we've cut them up into little chunks, added in sweet potatoes right now so that they fry off as well, and everything just gets a nice kind of sweeter taste to it. We've even, when we've had some tatties, just plain old King Edwards or something, they got chopped up and put in as well, and that just makes it a little bit more hearty. And we are just going to keep moving this round the pan for a few more minutes. just to let things cook off. And what we can do now is I'm just going to turn down my heat a little bit on that. I'm going to put the lid on, and I'm actually going to let that cook for 4 or 5 minutes just with the lid on, just to sort of sweat everything down a little bit more. So we'll pause here, come back when it's time to take that lid off and move on to the next step. Right, so we're going to get the lid back off of this now. Just put that there. Just watch when you take the lid off that you don't get a face full of steam. Give it a wee stir around, everything's looking nice and starting to kind of soften up. You can always try the carrot. And you can sort of taste it already, it's softer. It's just got a much sweeter, richer taste than, say, if you just cut up carrots and boil them in the pan. So what we're going to do now, just to bring out the flavour a bit, we're going to use some smoked paprika. I've got a tablespoon of paprika there, and I think in the packs that's what we've put in. For this amount of soup, I'm not going to use all of that, just because it's not my preference. Obviously this is your food, you can put in as much or as little as you want. So I'm going to start with a sort of generous heaped teaspoon of paprika, smoked paprika, sorry. And as I say, if you are veggie, then smoked paprika is a really good way of adding a bit of a kind of meaty taste to food. The sort of richness of flavour that you sometimes get from, say, if you had bacon in here or something like that, without obviously adding in the meat. And for us that means that, as I say, it makes life easy for us because we're not having to cook 2 or 3 pans. I'm actually just going to put a wee bit more in there. Just like a little, about half a teaspoon now, just to add it in. It's your food, so if you try this and you feel like you'd like a bit more flavour, then by all means crack on, put a bit more smoked paprika in. And we're just going to stir that around. I'm just going to turn the heat up again a little bit, now the pan lid's off. And just let that cook off for a moment or two. Doesn't have to go for long. And what you should be getting is the sort of paprika should just be now getting absorbed and coating the veg down the bottom and absorbing into that mix. And I'm not getting, if I just lift up my pan, you can see it's not burnt at the bottom at all. There's just a little bit of the kind of juices sitting on the bottom. So that's just about bang on. I think after a couple of years I'm finally getting the hang of these hot plots at SiMy. Once you're happy that that's all cooked off, then it's time to add the water. So I've got in here, I've got about, I think this is about 2 litres of water that's just going to go in the pan. Bang that up to maximum to bring that up to the boil. And I'm going to add my passata. Excuse me, turning my back on the camera. There we go. So I'm just going to add in chopped tomatoes will work as well, just as well. Again, we tend to use passata so that any of the kids that don't like lumpy soup aren't getting bits of chopped tomato in there. But yeah, at home I would probably use chopped tomato rather than passata. And what I've actually done is just fill up the carton with more water. So that's 500 millilitres of passata, and then another 500 millilitres of water just to rinse it out. So that's in total, that's now 3 litres of water that's gone in here. And then we're just going to pop the stock cubes in, the stock pots. I'm not sure which one you'll have got in your pack. I'm making this before we make the packs up. Oops. So stock cubes, stock pots, they're all pretty much the same. I think the stock pots have got a little bit less salt in them. So it's not much in it. So I'll just do that. Give my hands a wipe. And give that a stir. And we're actually well on the way now, so the only other thing that we really need to do now is we're going to put the lid on that again. And I'm just going to let that come up to the boil. So again, we'll just take a fast forward to this water starting to come to the boil. So hi folks, that's us now, got our stock with all our vegetables and what have you boiling nicely. So the only thing that's left to do now, apart from turn this down a wee bit, is to add our lentils. So we've got between 3 and 4 litres of water in here, or 3 and 4 litres of a liquid, including the passata. So I'm going to add the whole bag, no actually I'm not. I'm going to add 3/4 of the bag of red lentils into this. That's a bit more than 3/4, been a bit adventurous there, but we'll cope. Now the only thing you need to do now is basically just keep an eye on it for the next 5 to 10 minutes while the lentils start to soften. When you first put them in, they have a tendency to sink to the bottom, and they can sort of stick to the bottom of the pan a wee bit. As soon as they start to sort of soften up, they start to kind of hang in your stock a bit more. They just float about and it's less of a problem. So just kind of give it a stir every couple of minutes, bring it back to boil if it's gone off there, and just a nice simmer. You don't want to boil it too hard, just a nice simmer, and that's pretty much it. Once your lentils have softened up, started to soften up, then you're free to leave it. What I usually do is our cooker, our oven has a little timer, or a timer on your phone or something like that. Set it for about 15-20 minutes, and when your timer goes off, head back through, give it a stir just to make sure that things aren't sticking, and then set it for another 15-20 minutes. And at the end of that second set of 15 or 20 minutes, you should find that the lentils have kind of really softened up and gone pretty mushy. The carrots and so on should all be pretty softened as well, and because they've already been partly fried off, and it should be pretty much ready to go. You can cook it for a little longer if you want. It won't do it any harm whatsoever to leave it just very, very gently simmering for as long as you want, really. You just need to keep an eye on it so it doesn't stick to the bottom, because you don't want it to taste burnt. But that's it. If you or your family like really smooth soup, then you can If you've got ye old stick blender, you can pop a stick blender in it and just blend it all down. I am a lumpy soup fan, so I like my soup with bits in it. So I tend to just leave it. I like all the mushy carrots and what have you floating about my soup. And that's really it. So what we're going to do is put the lid back on this, leave it a bit of time, and then we'll come back to it right at the end and just check that it's all cooked off nicely. So we'll see you in about 20 minutes real time. So here we are, 20 minutes or so later, and our soup is ready to go. It's a nice kind of gloopy thick mix. You can always add, if you've put in too many lentils and it's gone a bit too thick on you, you can always add a little bit extra water, add in another stock pot if that makes the whole thing a bit sort of watery feeling. Just tweak it to suit. Obviously if it's too thin, the only thing you can really do is add a bit more lentils and just keep cooking it until it thickens up. But it's a pretty straightforward recipe, and it's a good one to start with. Nice and easy one if you're not feeling in the mood for lots of complicated cooking. That's it, lentil soup. Enjoy!